Hey, there are different ways this healthcare bill thingy is being portrayed. Here's the way it was portrayed this morning with the recently engaged couple of Mika Brzezinski and Joe Scarborough and the team.
Here's a photo in the Rose Garden of the president flanked by his party's leadership. He surrounded himself
Mika, just hold on. Donnie Deutsch, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt the script here. I want you to look at this picture.
Bunch of middle-aged white guys.
Of a billionaire.
Yeah.
Surrounded by a lot of millionaires.
Yeah.
They're all middle-aged and older white guys. And they are all going to be facing constituents next year who are going to tell them stories about how they voted to gut their health care to give the richest 1% in their district tax breaks.
And what are we looking at? A bunch of fat, middle-aged, rich, white guys.
Well, there's a woman in there. She has her head down, though. Yeah.
That's your ad. That's your ad going forward.
She doesn't look too happy.
You know, Joe, Mika said this looked like a golf course ribbon cutting. It's a golf course ribbon cutting with 6 holes of the course completed. They got it through the house, which I understand why Paul Ryan is happy. I understand why Mark Meadows in that picture is happy.
But by the way, Willie, it's a country club with restrictive membership.
Right.
Right. Obviously, you have to be white and a male to be there.
Wow. Wow. How did that become part of the conversation? You're fat and white.
I think they're talking about the potential for political ads and that sort of thing. The branding expert Donnie Deutsch weighing in, but
well, they did get into
casual racism toward people born with fair skin is amazing these days.
Did get into the specifics of they're going to have face their constituents are going to say, why did you take away my health care and give tax breaks to the richest 1%? Is that exactly what happened? We'll ask Craig here in a second. And there's another angle of it. Oh, Mika, at one point, she was talking about how, because they had a big party there after the vote when they went over to hang out with Donald Trump. She said, and they'd ordered many cases of Bud Light. She said with dismissive, what kind of awful human beings are this?
Oh, my God. Ladies and gentlemen,
I found that hilarious. Bud Light. Oh, my God.
Here he is, Craig Gottwals. Craig, the Obamacare lawyer. He makes his living in advising companies. He could advise yours if you'd like about health care and benefits and that sort of thing and trying to anticipate what's coming down the road so they can budget that sort of thing. He is not a political operative. He's a healthcare pro. Hey, Craig, how are you?
Good morning, gentlemen. You sapped my will to live quite a bit with that audio. That was rough. I thought yesterday on AM Jose was bad.
Yeah.
I have not seen today yet. That was rough.
Why were you texting me angrily yesterday?
Both of you. I couldn't hold back. I had to give it to both of you. Yesterday's first hour and 20 minutes of Morning Joe was the worst reporting I've ever seen on healthcare in my 20 years of working in healthcare.
And I'll admit to, by the way, going on the air with that information, assuming that Joe Scarborough had some idea what he was talking about. I then learned later, because you handily told me, go to 6:17 Central Time and watch Morning Joe, and I did, when Congressman from Oregon explained how they were completely wrong on how they were portraying the healthcare bill.
Well, the whole pre-existing condition argument it was unbelievable. And then that chart, Jack, that was from the Center for American Progress. And the chart that you referenced on the air yesterday, it was a chart showing what an insurance company would have to pay on average for an individual who, for example, had asthma, had cancer, had any one of the various maladies. That's nothing more than an actuarial chart saying, yeah, if Jack Armstrong comes to us and he already has cancer, this is what we can expect to pay over the course of a year. Well, they took that chart and they repackaged it as though this is what the Republican health care bill is going to mean you will pay in a year,
and all of the media was using that chart. All the media was using that chart to show what it was going to be like with pre-existing conditions.
Right, from a far-left think tank, and then they misrepresented what they're saying. So let's get to the bottom line of it, Craig, for people, real people. So Jack battled the medium C. Under the Republican plan, what's his situation? Anybody with a pre-existing condition?
Yeah, so under the Republican plan, as it stands now, everything would be the same as Obamacare. If you had cancer, you would apply for insurance. You would have to be issued insurance. If you did happen to go more than 2 months with no insurance, then you might have to pay a 30% load on your premium for a year to make up for the fact, not even make up for it entirely, just make up for it a little bit, the fact that you didn't have prior coverage and you're coming in with a pre-existing condition.
Is that true in all 50 states? Because I understand there's like a block grant or something like that.
Well, that's the way it would work now, right? And all they did to change it yesterday was they took the law they had 2 months ago, they moved it about 6 inches to the right, and they changed it just ever so slightly to gain the Freedom Caucus and lose a couple Tuesday morning people. And now they end up with this law that says what they were spinning out of control on Morning Joe was to say, oh, if you have a pre-existing condition, your state could really harm you. And that's not true, because what would happen is the state would have to apply to the federal government for an exemption from that pre-existing clause in the new health care bill. The federal government would have to say, okay, yeah, we approve that exemption, and then the state could make up its own rules for how to handle a pre-X. But the thing to keep in mind is, in 2009, before we had any Obamacare, the states already did this on their own. So every state in which you broadcast had a law in place that said we can only charge sick people 20% more than the very healthiest people, or 30%, depending upon the state.
And did that vary?
Already had those. Go ahead.
Did that vary a fair amount from state to state? My question being, I don't understand why that wouldn't be fine. So some states, they're really into people with pre-existing conditions not having to pay more. Some states think you should have to pay a lot more. Well, then either live in a different state or get active in state politics. That doesn't really bother me.
That's right, Jack. It varied. Most states had a 20 to 30% separation. Here in California, as an example, it was 20%. I think Nevada, if I remember correctly, went all the way up to 50% difference in pricing. But every state had that mechanism in place, every single state. Now, under this law, we're going to basically go back to that with the addition of, oh, by the way, states, here's extra tens of billions of dollars. They talk about the $8 billion that got added yesterday, but really there was $130 billion already in there for these high-risk pools. The federal government is saying to the states, go back to what you did in 2009, and, oh, by the way, here's another $138 billion to help soften the blow for those people that cannot afford the 20, 30, or 40% more premium they may have to pay.
The wrongly reported number of the day was that pool of money for pre-existing conditions. Everybody was going with $8 billion. Nancy Pelosi used the number of people out there. I think she said 27% of Americans have pre-existing condition. I think a lot of those people are probably old people, so they're covered by something else anyway.
It's even worse, Jack. It's even worse. And that's why I wanted you to listen to that congressman. If you heard what he said this only impacts like 3% of people max.
3%.
Because if you already have coverage, federal law before Obamacare was you had to get renewed. In other words, let's say I'm covered at work and I've got a pre-existing condition. If I'm already covered, no problem. If I'm on Medicare, Medicaid, Tri-Cal, VA, whatever, pre-existing condition is only an issue if you are coming into the insurance system anew, if you are somebody in the individual market who did not have health care. If you got a job that had health care, you were covered. So this is that small pool of people that actually bought Obamacare.
But they would have to pay a higher premium for 1 year if they'd gone without insurance for a couple of months.
Exactly.
So,
and we just set aside a bunch of money to help them do that.
So we got this, I'm on everybody's email list. We got from the the Democrat National Committee. Hours ago, House Republicans voted to take away 24 million people's health care. True?
Well, this comes back to the whole thing. If I don't put a gun to your head and make you buy it and you choose not to buy it, did I take it away from you?
Okay, so
That's what's going on here, because they're not forcing you to buy health care, and so we know X millions of people are going to say, well, then I'm not going to buy it, even though we're going to give them money to buy it.
Interesting. That's an interesting way to spin the numbers.
Craig Gottwals is on the line. Craig, the Obamacare lawyer. What are your other headlines for what passed yesterday, which, by the way, will be altered and bandied about in the Senate, sent back to the House, and emerge unrecognizable? But
well, the part of yesterday that infuriated me so much was all of this hubbub about pre-existing conditions, when in reality, we're going back to a world that we had in 2009 with more protections than we had in 2009. So they make it sound like in 2009 we had everybody dying in the street. And the reality is we didn't. We had a couple of million, maybe 5-6 million people that actually had a problem getting health care because they had a pre-existing condition and they'd gone without coverage. Well, we've basically put in a system to solve that now. And they're saying that, there's no protection for pre-existing conditions, which I think is insane. Look, yesterday's bill, the bottom line on yesterday's bill is, if you were comparing it to our state of nature from 2011 through 2016, yesterday was a B+. It was really good for people that want more freedom and less taxes. If you're comparing yesterday to 2009 before Obamacare, it was a D-.
Wow.
Because, yes, we cemented the idea that health care is an entitlement that we're going to have to pay for forever. I mean, that's the real bad news here.
Okay, so this is such a fundamental question, and it's an absolute illustration of the stupidity of our politics that it's not brought up more often. But as a guy who advises companies with hundreds or thousands of employees who need to know this, what is the state right now of Obamacare?
Well, the state of Obamacare is still the law of the land, right? We know this thing hasn't actually repealed anything yet until it goes through the Senate and the president. So Obamacare is, but the problem with Obamacare
what's its functional state?
Oh, yeah, it's in disarray, as you guys have noted very well over the days on your show. Insurers don't know what's coming. Insurers are not confident they're going to get their reimbursements and their risk pools that they're built into Obamacare. And the Trump administration did issue that executive order, which seemed like nothing, but in reality, basically what Trump told all federal agencies is, when in doubt, don't enforce Obamacare. And so insurance companies are bailing at record rates now, and Obamacare is dying and will be dead within, depending upon your state, it's dead this year. In California, for example, it could limp along for 3 more years just because we have such a big economy with many insurers still engaged.
Okay, so it was dying on its own because it was never sustainable, and then the Trump administration has done it further damage. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's fair to say, absolutely.
As I straddled the aisle like some sort of overweight gymnast in an attempt to be fair and accurate.
Yeah.
So, all right.
And
go ahead.
Is health care going to be more expensive? If something close to what passed yesterday ends up being the law of the land, is health care for most people going to be more expensive soon, cheaper? What direction is it going?
Well, okay. I always start this conversation by saying health care is going to go up a minimum of 6% per year for the next 10 years.
God!
Bottom line.
Oh, my God!
And it had gone up more like 9% the last 10 years. So It's going to go up at least 6% per year.
That's incredible.
This law, I think, now the CBO score says 10 years down the road, it'll be 10% less than Obamacare would have been. So you're talking about you're only shaving 1% off of the increase per year. I actually think with the changes they made yesterday, if the Senate were to embrace those changes, we could double that to 2.5%, because the cool thing about what they did yesterday that is not reported is this state waiver thing, if it actually works, if they get to the point where states can get these waivers, and then in phase 3, remember this was all supposed to be done in phases. In phase 3, if they can get the provision passed that says that you can buy insurance across state lines, we Californians who are going to be in an Obamacare system forever, because California has already passed state versions of Obamacare that it's never going to undo. We could buy an insurance policy from, for example, Texas or Idaho, which will have skinny policies. And then you actually could let people vote and the market could start to take control. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. And so this could be great. I mean, I saw Charles Krauthammer last night, and I do generally agree with what he said, and that we're 7 years into Obamacare, we're halfway to single-payer medicine. He thinks this thing buys us 7 more years. I think that's probably about right.
Wow. So you think it's probably about right in the next decade, then we'll be to single-payer because that's where we're headed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
That if we hadn't passed this, we'd be there in less than 5. I think this just gives us a little hope.
I've heard good things about Singapore's system. How do you like the Singaporean system? Well, we'll have you on down the road to talk about that. Craig, the Obamacare lawyer, if you need help with your benefits and stuff like that, you can get in touch at benefitrevolution.com. Is that right?
-revolution.com, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like punctuation in websites. Don't like it.
Google the Benefit Revolution. You'll get there.
Yeah, that's true. If you can't find it, you have no employees. All right, thanks, Craig. See ya.
How could you have a system where healthcare costs were going up 9% per year, and now with the Great Fix they go up 6% per year? Wow, because I don't know about you, but I can't come up with investments that are going to average 9% per year or 6% per year forever.
If you got one, email me.